Don't stop.
Hi, thanks for joining me in the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randall-Friedman. I cannot stop singing the Madonna songs in my head. I love her new album, and it's definitely the album of the summer. I will tell you something that's bizarre about myself is that whenever I sit down to do my podcast, I have these headphones on. If you're not watching the video, I'll just tell you visually I have headphones on and I have a microphone in front of me, and I can hear myself. So you can hear what your real voice sounds like. And I am a horrible singer. Horrible. When I go to karaoke, when I get off the stage, people are like, oh, thanks for trying. No need to try again, though. Yeah. So I'm one of those people oh, yeah, he's tone deaf. Yeah. So it's okay. You don't need to come. But I sit down, and every time I sit down, I sing into the microphone for a minute. I don't know why I do this. It's become a bad habit. But I'm singing all these Madonna songs from her new album, and I'm just singing the chorus or whatever. And then, because I think it's just fun. I feel I don't think I'm Madonna, but it's kind of fun just to kind of sing into a microphone and hear yourself. And maybe it's helping me hearing my own voice, because when you listen to your own voice, it's not really your voice that you're hearing. You're hearing another voice. Maybe that's just the voices in my head. I have 6 of them. Just kidding. But yeah, that's basically what I do now. Is I'm doing a concert for myself every morning when I sit down in front of the microphone. Let's talk about my guest. Their name is Arnold. I have read a lot of articles about Indigenous women and Two Spirit gone missing or murdered. And it really bothers me. And I feel like it was a topic that has not been discussed enough. And so I have searched and researched for 4 or 5 months on who I could bring on my show to talk about this, because I think it's so serious that you have these Indigenous people of North America that just go missing, and a lot of people, nobody's really doing anything about it. I mean, maybe their community is, or their tribe is, but mostly it's just kind of going and just being ignored. Where if this would have been if this was happening in Connecticut with white families, it would be all over the news and stuff. So it bothers me. And also, Arnold is Two Spirit, and we talk about that. And if you don't know what Two Spirit is, because I didn't know what Two Spirit was until 6 or 7 years ago. And Arnold's fascinating, and I'm really glad I got the chance and the opportunity to sit down, and we talked about this, and we talked about this issue that's happening. So enjoy my interview with Arnold, and if you have any comments or questions, send them to me in a DM, and I can get them over to Arnold. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with a new guest. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me in the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I have a guest I have been searching for months, and I finally found him. And I think this topic is so important. So today's episode could get a little serious, but we're going to try to make it inspiring at the same time. So I want to welcome Arnold Dahl-Wooley to my show. He is a nationally recognized Two Spirit public speaker, advocate, and founder of the Two Spirit Advocacy. Thanks for joining, Arnold. I appreciate it.
Bonjour. Hello. I'm very honored to be here.
So I want to kind of just start off. My audience is a lot of LGBTQ plus, and it wasn't until maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I heard the term Two Spirit. So maybe you can give my audience a definition of what Two Spirit means.
Oh, absolutely. This would be a small little brief definition, but Two Spirit is something we're from part of the LGBTQ plus population. So we're the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning population in Native American culture. So we're known as the Two Spirit. And Ojibwe, it's Niche Mani Duwag, Two Spirit. But anywhere you go into the whole continent, there's a different name and terminology for that. But all of them are sacred. All of them are very respected, highly spiritual, and honored. And some of them are great leaders as well. So Two Spirit culturally is something very sacred, honored, and respected because we can see through the eyes of more than one gender. We're not just male or female, but we're considered both. And so with this, we become highly spiritual and sacred.
And did you ever have any, like, has it been like that forever? Or was there a time where your culture had to build up to get there?
Well, so this has been going on for the Two Spirit population has always been there, always. And so there's even archaeological evidence that shows that there's been Two Spirit couples that have been going on for tens of thousands of years. Over colonization, that's when we started to learn different words. We're going from sacred, honored, and respected to
Mhm.
abomination, sinner, ridicule, and where violence is acceptable. And so that wasn't a part of our culture. Over colonization, we started to lose those sacred aspects, that respect
Oh, yeah.
aspect. And so today we are reclaiming, we're making sure we're reclaiming our language, we're reclaiming our culture, we're reclaiming all of our history. And the Two Spirit is very much in that as well.
And if somebody is outside of kind of the indigenous population and they say that they're two spirit, that can't be accurate. Is that correct?
You're correct because we want to make sure that we don't do like cultural appropriation because there's cultural
Mhm.
aspects that go along with the terminology Two Spirit. So since I'm Ojibwe, so there's cultural terminologies that come along with that. It's always been something respected, honored, and sacred, but then also too, it's like there's ceremony that comes along with it. Like there's my little medicine pouch too. So there's cultural
Yeah.
aspects that go along with being a Two Spirit. You can please take the teachings of knowing that you're sacred, you're respected, you deserve all of the wonderful things. Don't take anything lesser than. Don't accept abomination, sinner, or ridicule, or anything like that. You're very powerful. The Two Spirit is a very powerful person, and so please let. I like to let everybody know that all of us from the 2S LGBTQ plus are something that's powerful and respected. So I don't accept anything less. But when you take the terminology Two Spirit, there's cultural aspects that go along with that. So don't take the name Two Spirit if you're not part of the indigenous population, but please take the teachings and please join us for conversation, friendship, and whatever.
I love that. That's so nice. This is why I have love people like you on my show, where it's the positive and inspiring, piece of it. So,
Oh, it's
so you've been doing this for over 20 years, right? And you've run a centerside suicide prevention. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been public speaking for 25 years. I mean, I've been doing this longer than that. I mean, as all of us,
Yeah.
we become unintentional advocates in our youth, just growing up, explaining our lives, explaining it to everybody. It's like, who am I? I'm gay, or I'm Two Spirit, or this is what's going on. And we're always explaining who we are. So, we always want people to like us too. Please like me. I'm gay. I hope you're okay with that. And, we always tend to
Yeah.
do something like that. But I have been speaking for 20 plus years and it's grown exponentially over the years. A lot of reach out or outreach going through the years. And then also I'm running Two Spirit Advocacy, which is the only one of its kind in the state of Minnesota. We want to make sure that we have crisis outreach information, healthcare items as well, information for you to connect with a therapist or a doctor, but also tribal entities too, in case we want to make sure we have our indigenous therapists. We want to make sure we have our ceremonies too, because when we come of age, there's certain ceremonies that we're supposed to be having, and we want to make sure we're
Mhm.
reincorporating that because the Two Spirit population historically we were always up front. We were the song. We'd sing songs. We were the leaders. We were the teachers. We were the healers, and all of that. And then over colonization, we kind of got pushed to the back. We're bringing that back forward. So at our advocacy, we even have drum making classes, and all of our Two Spirit populations there to remember who we are. So our advocacy, it's a lot in one entity. We want to also make sure that we just have pizza night where you can come over and be your true, authentic
Yeah.
self. If you need outreach, here's some information for you. If you need health items, here it is for you. And we also have like a lot of books too that have our BIPOC, our Indigenous persons, and our gay, queer, lesbian authors. And so they're all in our little library even. So we just want to make sure we have a high representation because visibility really does save lives.
And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. Now, do you ever get frustrated when you have to, you're not doing this as much anymore, but when you have to kind of endlessly almost explain Two Spirit to people, or almost stick up for it in a way or protect it, I think is the word that I'm looking for, is to protect it and educate people. Does that ever become exhausting to you, just when you have to constantly say this is who we are, this is our people, and you get pushback from maybe people outside of your culture? Does that get tiring?
This is the fun thing about it. I never get tired of it. I really don't. I
Good.
really enjoy the conversation with people out there. A lot of people bring me in, and I'm able to have a discussion with maybe, like a dozen people or maybe over 500 at one setting. When I give my
Yeah.
presentations, I never tire of it. People are genuinely curious. People have a genuine curiosity about, it's like, what does this mean? And where are we? Because when we say we're on native land, it's like, where is that? Where is that? But it's everywhere. Because sometimes
Yeah.
people get confused, like, what's native land? Is that Leech Lake Reservation, where I'm from, or Red Lake Reservation, or Boys Fort, or all these different reservations? Like, well, no, when we talk historically, where were Native Americans yesteryear? Everywhere, the entire continent, all the way up from the tip of Alaska and all the way down to the tip of Mexico, all of our native brothers and sisters. We're the Two Spirit. There. Where are we today? We're there. And so it's really interesting to have that conversation with people about who we are, and also too to peel back the layers, because it's like, you start to see me as a person. It's like, oh, this person
Yeah.
has parents. This person has siblings. This person has a husband. This person is loved by nieces and nephews and friends and community. And culturally, they're respected. And I want to make sure that I live my life very visible, because I remember the days I started to public speak, my phone was going off incessantly. It was from the youth, and they were curious as to why I was happy, from the Two Spirit population, because they were very distraught watching things on TV, feeling just emotionally beating themselves up, or listening to
Hmm.
negative stereotypes. And it's just, and I also make sure it's like, dismiss all the negativity. We're powerful. And so I never tire of talking about it with people. And there's really not, I mean, you get a little negativity here and there, nothing really. The enormous amount of support and gratitude over the years is one of the reasons I really keep on doing it. I just absolutely love it to explain who I am, but also the millions of us.
Before you started kind of doing this work, and were you kind of were you visible to yourself in a way? Were you kind of maybe keeping things to yourself? I don't want to say in the closet, but that's kind of what the term that's coming to me. But were you not being your authentic self at one point, and then you finally realized that you wanted to be your authentic self or help this group of people?
Yes, this is a fantastic question. I actually talk about this in my PowerPoint, because I wasn't my true authentic self when I was in my youth. I always knew who I
Okay.
was. I was getting more information from, like, my grandmother, Nokomis, that's my grandmother. I already heard about Two Spirits, something powerful and sacred, and just other elders throughout the area. Because elders, they usually know things. They just know things. They can, like,
Yeah.
to know who people are. And I'm not the only Two Spirit person in my family. And it just was more aware to me as I grew older, because I'm the youngest in my out of my siblings. But I was very closeted, I guess would be, I don't really
Yeah.
know what else. I wasn't my true authentic self, because this is going to date me a little bit, because you remember those tape recorders, you press play and record and you can get your
Yeah.
music. That's like Casey Kasem's top
Yes.
40. And so
Yeah, I
I
used
used
to.
to,
I'd put it up to the radio and used to play, make my own mixtape. So yes, I know exactly where you're coming from.
everybody come in the room, like, shh, getting my music. But
Exactly.
you could also record your voice. And so
Yes.
that was one of the things too. It's like, me and my friends and one of my brothers, we're playing with the tape recorder, because that was some technology back in the day. And it's like, press play and record things in the room, or what's on the radio. So we're all recording our voices, because I'd never heard my own voice before. Inside my head, my voice has always been very deep and gravelly.
Mm.
That's all I heard. And then when it was
Mhm.
playing back, I heard my friends, we kind of laugh and giggle, because they just sounded the same to me. But then I get to my voice and I was like, oh, you can tell. And I didn't know that you could tell from my voice because what I'm hearing in my head was very different than what came back on the tape recorder. There were certain words I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. And I changed the way I talked. I made sure I walked the correct way. I sat the right way. I spoke the right way. I joined sports the right way. I even dated girls and such too. And just some wonderful people over the years, these wonderful women, but then, we're friends today. But the reason why I did that, because people in my school were being attacked. People
Mm.
that were from the 2S LGBTQ plus, or people being perceived as such. And I wanted to graduate. So I pretended to be somebody else for years. And I'm
Mm.
sure you can relate. All of us usually can relate in some
Yeah,
aspect, but pretending to be somebody
absolutely.
else every day is exhausting. It's exhausting. And so coming forth and really wrapping my mind and my everything around my culture is like, this was something that was very powerful for me to stand into my true authentic self. And this is my true authentic self. There's no reason for me to apologize for anything. This is me. You like me? Fantastic. If you don't, I'm still cool with that. We have to respect each other though. I'm going to respect
Yeah.
who you are as a person or your culture and vice versa. So yeah, it's being involved in my own culture really helped me to step forth in my true identity.
Can we talk about some of the spirituality that you have? So one of the things is, a lot of audiences come to spirituality through kind of grief or signs of from the dead. In your tradition, what happens to two spirit persons after they die?
It's going to vary from uh, tribe to tribe, and so there's a bazillion tribes out there. So I'm
Okay.
Ojibwe, and some of it is, we transcend onto to the spirit realm, and then we're going to go see I'll meet my spirit guides. I do have my spirit guides today, which is all the birds that fly. That was given to me through my culture and ceremony, and also my spirit name, which is Hakanimat. Hakanimat, which is very suiting for me. I thought it was very wonderful, is because it means strong wind. So it's like I
Okay.
I do speak quite a bit. And so when we pass on, it's a continuation. It's just a continuation of our life. And this is going to vary too from which elder and stuff you talk to as well, and also tribe to tribe, but it doesn't end here. It continues on. And whatever form you think about, that's who we are. But then also too, it's like we just continue on. The path goes on.
And so is it reincarnation or you continue on as a spirit?
Continuing on as a spirit. And
Okay.
Ojibwe is like, yeah, there's no really not like a reincarnation. Some people may think of it, it's up to them too. It's like, I'm coming back as a bear, or I'm coming back as a wolf. If you see a wolf, that's me. Just remember that's me. Or,
Yeah.
whatever their spirit journey may be. And it's going to differ for every person what their spirit journey may be. And so we do have our sacred items like tobacco. Ours is tobacco. When I give my spirit offerings, it's tobacco and for prayer. And then we smudge and we smoke pipe and the smoke goes up. It's like that's our prayers going up to the spirits. Get you money to
Okay.
great spirit.
Okay. Awesome. Do you do a lot of education with people? Because I think your culture is so interesting, and I would, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, there's another reason we're going to get to in a moment. But do you do you teach people outside of your tribe or culture about these things? Because I think it's a whole new world for people, and the whole world just seems like it's moving so fast. But I feel like this brings people back to reality. What you're talking about. Do you feel that way?
I do. I speak to a lot of people outside of the culture. I really do. It's one of the things people have. I travel all over the place to talk to people about this because we can't see the world through like one lens. And also too, when I go into a space, there's millions of Native Americans. We're everywhere, and
Yeah.
sometimes we kind of forget that. So when I walk into a space, I do look. I look around to see. It's like, am I seen here? Am I remembered here? And because I need to make sure I feel seen, I feel safe, and I feel heard. And that includes for being part of the 2S LGBTQ plus. I want to make sure that we're all feeling seen, heard, and I talk to a lot of people outside of the culture, and they have that genuine interest. I want to learn
Yeah.
about other people's too. And I did. I learned a lot about other people's cultures throughout the years because I was forced to. That was in school. So
Yeah.
I did learn a lot. I traveled quite a bit. Um, and I think during like these reclamation years, I think it's really important for these conversations to happen because when I was a youth reading our American history books, they talked about Native Americans as the savages, and with those little mean
Yes.
cartoons of us. And I was like, what is this? And we were also written in the past tense. And so I'm like, um, we're we're still here. We're the bad
Hmm.
guys in this story, and it was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around that. And so, as we've grown older, it's like things are being addressed now. People are realizing we're not the bad guys in this story. We're still here. We have our ceremony and our culture, and it's like, and a lot of it's extremely. It just talk about community, and that's something that people have a real genuine interest. Is like, what does this mean when we're having a ceremony? It's like we're respecting like the earth, we're respecting this food, or we're respecting each other. When we talk about community, we're talking about from infant to elderly. We want to make sure we respect all that. And then also too, that once somebody passes away, the respect doesn't go away because we make sure we still have our spirit offerings for the spirits. We do still bring food to these homes, to the spirit plates. Every time we say a prayer, there's always food that's left aside for the spirits. We want to make sure we never forget. We always want to make sure we remember our journeys, remember who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. But also, too, it's like I really enjoy sharing this information with people. They do
Hmm.
have a genuine interest, and I'm more than happy to share it. I want to hear your story too, because this is how we have that dialogue of
Yeah.
it humanizes us.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. I do want to ask you about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives movement. I think this is missing from headlines. It's missing. People aren't talking about it enough. And whenever I, stumbled upon this, because I do a news podcast as well, whenever I stumbled upon this almost by accident, and I'm like, how is this not being talked about more? And why are people not bringing this up? Because these are people that are missing and murdered, and how are we ignoring this? So can you tell me like what your thoughts are and your involvement with it?
Zach, I appreciate this question so much because this is something that it's happening quite frequently. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, MMIW, but also known as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives, because it's more than just the women. And the Two Spirit are involved in that as well. People want to know, it's like, why are the Two Spirit in the marches with the MMIW, MMIR? Because these are two entities that are silenced through violence. And when we say silenced through violence, like, when the Indigenous population, if we wind up missing, there's not a lot of headlines. If we wind up murdered, there's not a lot of headlines. And it's difficult to post that stuff online because we usually have to say end of life or this, or we have to really
Yes.
sugarcoat what's happening. It's like, but when we sugarcoat it, it really takes away what's happening. Our population is really being targeted for violence, assault. Um, it's there's billboards when I go speak at a lot of places. Sometimes I'll drive by the billboards of missing persons, missing Indigenous persons.
Mhm.
There's males and there's females and young and a little bit older. And I'll get to the place where I'm having the conference and I'll say, hey, did anybody drive by the billboards today? And it was like, what are you talking about? It's the billboards of the missing and murdered Indigenous, relatives, our Indigenous population. They're like, I didn't see anything. It's like it's strange what we're becoming accustomed to. We're just become putting on blinders. This is the Indigenous population. Sometimes people really don't care. They just go by. But I've been personally affected by our missing and murdered Indigenous population. But as a two-spirit person, it's like we do see the violence that does happen to communities. It's important to talk about this stuff. It's really important for us to see that who is being targeted. Our native populations are. We really need to discuss that, and when we minimalize it, sugarcoat it, It's not helping. And I really, really appreciate people going, tell me, what does this mean? It means our population is being attacked. It means our population is being minimalized and just completely dismissed. When atrocities are happening, people just dismiss us. It's like we're Indigenous. It's like, well, we're here. We're trying to tell you we need help.
How does that happen though? Because you're human beings. I just don't understand how people can just ignore it or push it aside. Like, how does this happen?
Well, Zach, it's probably because you're a wonderful person and you have empathy, but sometimes people really don't have empathy for the Indigenous population. If you really just kind of like peel the layers back a little bit, sometimes a lot of reservations are in an impoverished state. A lot of reservations are.
Mm.
And there's a history as to how we got there. There is a history, and it's not too long ago because sometimes people think that, oh my gosh, this is ancient history. Let it go, let it go. It's like, well, let's put time frames onto things for you to understand how short this was. My mom was in a boarding school. My grandparents are in boarding schools. And so people not much older than me were in boarding schools. And so we have poverty. There's certain addictions that may be happening on a reservation. So it's when you have those disparities working together, so it becomes difficult. And so we're coming out of that now. We are coming out of that. We're just like, you know what? We have our voice back. We're never going back to where we're at again. That's why it's like, we have our language immersion programs, our cultural teachings, persons like me going out there talking about this stuff, people like you asking questions. So when people dismiss the Native American voice, though, this is how that happens. When they dismiss the queer voice, this is how this happens. When you start to look at another nationality or person, just dismiss them like that we're not equal, that's how the violence happens to our Indigenous women, our Indigenous relatives, and our gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning population too. It's like we get dehumanized and people just don't care what happens to us. We need to make our voices loud, say we need to be heard. We're not standing for this anymore.
So who is abducting and murdering this population? Like, can you give me some examples of, and what happens? Are you in your community and then you realize this person's gone missing and nobody is helping find them, or they're murdered and is anybody looking into in a murder investigation? Can you give me a little details about how this happens?
Sure. It's sometimes like when a person is missing, and I was like, it's not like I immediately go towards like, oh my gosh, this happened. It's like, well, are they over at so and so's house? Are they over here or are they over there? Um, Historically, as we didn't run into the panic mode right away. Human trafficking has been increasing, especially on the reservations. Human trafficking is becoming a huge problem, and so today, it's like when we discuss like where's this person at, and what's beautiful about social media immediately today because we're very much aware that this can happen. People coming from outside the reservation, this is where human trafficking and people coming over to our areas and then they're missing. And I was actually giving a presentation one time over at a place called Tower, Minnesota, and the police department came on right after I was done with my presentation. They go, "Oh, guess what? We just arrested somebody that was trying to human traffic right here at this arena." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And they verified that this happens quite frequently. We just don't hit the headlines as much. It's happening frequent, and we do have persons that show up at tribal events, or we have our MMIW walks, missing and murdered Indigenous women walks, where we're wearing red, and we have people on billboards or holding signs of who's missing. They have T-shirts, and there's quite a lot of names, unfortunately, that we have. We don't want to let the search end. The search always goes on. We want to make sure that we always bring the names forward. And these are people. These are family members. These are sons and daughters, part of our families and our communities. So we always make sure we talk about them incessantly. We will never tire of it because we talk about community and pulling together. This is one of the things we really pull together on is to make sure that we need to end the violence that is happening to our tribal people.
And when a two-spirit person goes missing, do they get less of an outcry almost, or less attention than a Indigenous woman would?
Not with MMIW. and MMIW are. It's a very powerful entity and force. And you'll always see Two Spirit people. When you see the MMIW events and awareness
Yeah.
gatherings and parades or marches, you're always going to see Two Spirit flags. It's the pride flag with eagle feathers in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you'll always see that. And they always speak with us. And we all show up at their events, they show up at ours. And Minneapolis last year, we at Two Spirit Advocacy, we reached out to MMIW and to say, hey, would you guys be interested in walking through the Twin Cities Pride with us carrying the great big pride flag? And they showed up in droves because they know it's
Wow.
like, this is important. You know, it's like we know what it's
Yeah.
like to be persecuted or dismissed and what type of violence can happen. So we need to bring awareness to pride, our Two Spirit population, all of our relatives. Yeah. And then they wore their shirts and their ribbon skirts and we just marched down Twin Cities Pride and it was powerful. It was absolutely powerful.
I just learned today on an interview that I did earlier today how Minnesota is like a safe haven for transgender people. And I had no idea, and I just, the person that I was speaking with is part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I interviewed a transgender woman on my show a couple months ago, which is how I got in touch with him. And he was just telling me how I never realized how open Minnesota was with people, and it makes me want to come visit because you don't you hear about all the things that was happening in Minneapolis with ICE and all the horrible things that were happening there, but I guess maybe that's what is putting Minnesota on the map is that all those bad things that are happening are now shining a spotlight on all the positive things that Minnesota offers. So I don't know. I just it was so refreshing to hear that about Minnesota overall.
Minnesota, it's a great state. You know, I grew up here. I moved away for a while, came back, and it's where I call home. And also too, this is where the Ojibwe are. Ojibwe are actually in Minnesota, Wisconsin, parts of Michigan, and into Canada. That's the Ojibwe Nation. And so it's important for me to be around that type of culture because that's where, I really, really see myself. But then also too, Minnesota has been fantastic for the trans population, queer population, gay, lesbian, all of us. It has been absolutely fantastic. But, it's not everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
So
no
tell
matter
me
where
about
you,
that.
well, there's small-minded people here and there. It depends on which communities you go to. Minneapolis
Mm.
as a whole and St. Paul has been pretty good. It's been very good. If you go into certain rural areas, not the reservations, certain rural areas where there's not a lot of diversity or, and I really don't want to stereotype those sections even, but
Yeah.
there's some people out there that it can be very mean. Um, Maybe you won't even feel safe around, but Minnesota for healthcare, really trying to make sure that we recognize the indigenous population, the queer population, the trans population, all of us. So Minnesota's really been fighting hard to make sure that all of us are seen and represented. I really appreciate Minnesota for that. Because I'm actually, I became the BIPOC leader of the year for the state of Minnesota last year for Pride. And at
Oh,
first I got this email and I thought it was spam at first, but
yeah.
but I was very, very pleased. So I got to meet like a lot of people from the BIPOC population. And for those that don't know, BIPOC is the Black Indigenous Person of Color.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that, all of us are seen and represented. And Minnesota really does a pretty good job of that. I really got to say it's been doing well.
It's so refreshing to hear that. Like again, like I never expected that from Minnesota, and I guess I just it's a smaller population state, and I've always lived in bigger cities like Miami and New York and Boston and Dallas. So it was nice to
Oh,
kind
it's
of
the
hear that.
Minnesota nice even. It's the you betcha. Here's a hot dish and all this stuff. And even our reservations, we have a different dialect, but it's kind of like similar. We all want to make sure that we're you're seen. And one of our
Yeah.
cultural aspects, please come to visit. One of our cultural aspects when you show up at our door, we always feed you. Here's
Yeah.
food. We always make sure.
And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. I want to just go back to when somebody is gone missing or they're taken. So, there's these data systems that are out there, and sometimes people can be misgendered or they can be erased. So, in a way, they're kind of vanishing twice, right? So, once they're vanishing in their life and then in this record. So, what would it actually take to make like a two spirit relative be countable? And how can we make that change happen?
Zach, I really love the way you said that. It's like they were being erased twice. That was painful to even hear, but that's absolutely true. When you get
Mhm.
misgendered and then you wind up missing. So um, there's certain steps that we have been taking to like this conversation right now for like Two Spirit to explain just a little bit of what this means, how sacred we are and powerful, how we work with
Mhm.
MMIW, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, to bring that awareness of what's happening and also to just share that word of what's going on. And we're sharing this with everybody to really make a difference. And we're all making a difference. We're making a difference to bring more visibility, more awareness. Um, Two Spirit Advocacy, we actually teamed up with MMIW to do a photo shoot, and it was completely wrapped around Two Spirit and MMIW. And you go into the gallery, which is going to be viewed again. It was traveling for a year. The gallery is called Voices, and you'll see some of the pictures. You see the red hand. Sometimes people don't. What does that red hand mean? And it's like, well, for one, it means that we're silenced through violence. And so to let people know that's what the red hand means. But also, too, it's red. Why is it red? Because that's the colors that spirits can see. And so that's why you see a lot of red when we're walking and marching or discussing. And even, I had pride stripes on my face, like opposite war paint. We're showing up in our war paint. It's pride stripes, MMIW, and also too being who we are today, which is tattoos, piercings, just showing up because sometimes people think they see us in yesteryear all the time, on the horses or in wigwams or teepees. A lot of people always go to teepees, but it's like we had wigwams out here. But then, so to bring us into today, it's like this is who we are today, but also to show what type of community are we. We're really trying to bring a lot of things forward in a picture and then educating the entire population of who we are. Please, let's put like billboards out. Let's end what's happening. Let's explain who the indigenous population are. Let's explain the disparities, how we got here, and what we're doing to get out of it. And also to say, please come on over to visit us and let's break some of those misconceptions of who we are, and also vice versa. We need to branch out and go out and check everything out as well, just to make sure we see who our community is. The more education we all have, the safer we become. And the more
Mhm.
that we go visit each other, the safer we become, because I realize, like, oh, they're not the bad guy, and they realize I'm not the bad guy. We just need to figure out, how do we keep ourselves safe? Visibility, awareness. I'm always about anti-bullying, suicide prevention, cultural inclusion. And why is this important? Because it saves lives. We need to make sure we pay attention to all of that.
What does the wider LGBTQ plus community get wrong about your culture and your people? What do they get wrong, or what are they missing? Like what education could we give them today?
One of the things that we could really talk about is, like, we're part of your community too. We're part of the little alphabet. We may have two S, the two spirit, because we have the cultural things that go along with that.
Mhm.
Like, my culture it's not going to be for people's entertainment when they wear fake feathers or whatever, when they see those Halloween
Yeah.
costumes and stuff. It's like my culture
Yeah.
isn't your
Yeah.
entertainment for that. But
Mhm.
we should be walking as one. I am super blessed to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. The best thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life is I'm gay. Because I've
Yeah.
learned so much about myself, about
Yeah.
just the fear of losing everybody, and then finding my own inner strength, and what does my culture say, and then I'm reaching out to the LGBT plus, the rest of the population. We're all there, though. That's what I love about the LGBTQ plus. I mean, all of our cultures, that we're all there, and
Yeah.
but we all know what it's like to be persecuted. Every one of us knows what it's like to have
Yeah.
your rights question, are you going to have equality rights? Are you going to be okay? It's like we all know what that feels like. And so what I like for the people, the LGBT plus, to understand is like, we're with you too. I have cultural aspects, let me hear yours and I'll share mine. And yeah, let's walk together, because my husband's white. So a lot of people don't know is I do have a husband and he's white. And so our conversations over the years have been fantastic. And what's great with him is like, he goes to ceremony with me. He does all of it. He's got his own spirit name. He really walks the native life, and it's. I've just been blessed to have this husband, and but also too, it's like I have the most wonderful in-laws I could ever dream of. They love me, I love them.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so we just
How did you
really.
guys meet?
Well, he used to manage a nightclub, and we met over a Bud Light. I'm really sorry about that, because that was, but that was before all the controversy came up. But it was
Yeah.
we just met just by chance, and he was working, I was a customer, and we sat there, we had a good conversation, the best conversation I've ever had in my life. And he says, you want to have another, visit tomorrow? I was like, yeah. And 27 years later, here we are.
Wow. It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, it goes by in a blink of an eye, but it still feels like yesteryear or yesterday. And yeah, he's the most important person in my life. And the conversations we've had about, that's what makes things interesting. Just the differences that we of upbringing. The foods that I grew up on. My traditional foods of wild rice or fish or deer, and then his family was come from a line of butchers, and they're German, and so it's just like just the differences on how interesting people really are. That's what I find, is that all
Yeah.
people are very interesting, and when we come together, just to celebrate life and each other, just wonderful things happen. And that way, they're very much involved with to make sure all of us stay safe and all of my community stay safe, and vice versa. That's why I think it's really important to reach out and get to know people. It's like, let's find out who our neighbors are. Let's find out who our community is.
If there's anything you wanted to kind of close the podcast with to make sure that listeners understand MMIWR, about maybe what needs to happen or something that they can do, or just your biggest concern, what would that be?
There's going to be two. The Two Spirit. I'll just start with the Two Spirit, because this is who I am.
Mhm.
I'm a Two Spirit man, and any form of Two Spirit, because that kind of all goes into one: male, female, trans, whatever. We're all Two Spirit.
Mhm.
If these are the sacred population, we're very powerful, we're very sacred, we're very respected, and that's something that comes with the cultural aspects of sacredness. And so this is something that's very important. So when I walk into an arena, that's who I am. That's all I will ever be. And so when we talk about the MMIW or MMIR, we need to pay attention. These are people. These are my community. These are my cousins. These are my family. And as Indigenous people, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot. And it wasn't just yesteryear. I see the effects of boarding school.
Mhm.
I am the effect of boarding school, because I'm not fluent. There's certain things I wasn't allowed to do as a youth. I grew up Catholic. That's another thing that a lot of us became, because we were forced into certain entities. So it was something for people to understand how much we've been through. We're still going through it, and we may need your help. What I mean by help is like, pay attention to your community. We're here. We never left. We've always been here.
Mhm.
And when you see an Indigenous person, realize we do have culture, and our culture is so beautiful. I really love my culture so much. Everybody loves their culture, and I love mine. And we all love our, let's show it proudly. But then also realize too, it's like, what certain atrocities may be happening, and and focused on our community, on the Native community. Pay attention to that. If this is your community, I would pay attention to yours. Please pay attention to ours. If there's certain things that you see, it's like, oh, is this person missing? Share it. Share what you know. If you think you see something that's a little off, go like, you know what? I'm not sure they're Native. I really don't want to get involved. If you see something happening, just call 911, tell them what you see, and you may save a life.
Yeah.
Just, sometimes we don't have to get into the thick of things, but just get involved. Learn who we are. I want to learn who we are. You learn who we are.
Yeah. If somebody wants to learn more about you, do you have a website, or how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I have a wonderful website. It's called Two Spirit Advocacy. So twospiritadvocacy.com.
Okay.
Yep, you can check that out. You'll see our upcoming events, a little history about me, and some wonderful photos. And yeah, all the photos were taken by the infamous, she's an Indigenous photographer, Adonis Rose Green from Green Photography. She does a lot of photos for Two Spirit, MMIW, and she travels all over the place. So see some of those, and I'm just giving her a shout out because she's a wonderful photographer. And you'll see that when you go to my website. And yeah, and pay attention. There's more coming.
Awesome. And I will put a link to your website in the description of this video or podcast. So if you didn't write it down, you can just go to the description and go and visit it. So thank you so much for coming on. Again, I've been looking for someone like you to come on and talk about this, because again, I think it's underrepresented. I think people aren't talking about it enough. And I hope this episode starts new conversations in the future, and it keeps the conversations going. So thank you so much for being on.
Chimigwich, which means many thank you, Zach. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you so much for helping me spread the information with you.
Come back on anytime you have a message that you want to put out there. I'm happy to have you back on. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it and leave a comment and tell us what you thought about it. And if you have more questions, leave them, and we will get back in touch with Arnold and have him back on to answer your questions, because education is really key. So thanks again for being on, Arnold.
Thank you.